during which time I impressed upon him my conviction that Africa's time for exponential growth and collective prosperity has come. As a case in point, Malawi is the first country to export goods to another country outside of its regional economic zone under the auspices of the AfCFTA. As over a dozen trucks are currently on the road from Malawi with agricultural products headed for South Sudan. This kind of interregional trade is a mission whose time has come. For it makes no sense that Africans should produce so much and trade so little among themselves. After all, no one knows the African market better than Africans themselves. After all, no one knows the African market better than Africans themselves. No one knows how to trade with an African like another African. Go into any market in the heart of any capital city in Africa, and you will see Africans negotiating prices of goods and services among themselves with a dexterity that escapes folks from other continents. We therefore owe it to ourselves and our motherland to leverage this continent-wide instinct and knack for entrepreneurship. For that to happen, we must regard the African Continental Free Trade Area not as an achievement, but as an opportunity. The Free Trade Area is merely the runway from which our economies must take flight. But the real work lies in making changes in our national policies and changes to our nationalist attitudes in order to make the most of this new opportunity. One area that I call on all countries to revisit is policies that regulate the movement of African nationals and goods across African borders and through ports of entry. It simply makes no sense for Africans to hold each other hostage at airports and border crossings, while Westerners are given preferential passage. Each regional economic bloc needs to lift those primitive restrictions with decisiveness. The same is true with the African air industry, where many economies have difficulty creating their own flagship airlines. I see no reason why a group of countries from the same regional economic bloc cannot explore the idea of collective ownership of one airline that eases movement across the continent. We need to embrace our African value of shared ownership. For many of us come from villages where the whole community collectively draws water from one well and drinks water under the shade of one tree. In our quest, therefore, to awaken the African economic giant that Africa is, we must remember that our Africanness is an asset, not a liability. It is ridiculous that a flight from one African country to another often costs more than a flight from Africa to Dubai. Whatever the causes of that dysfunctional situation must be dealt with decisively if we are to implement the AfCFTA. Another area that could benefit from a uniquely African approach of sharing assets is electrification. So much of the potential of the AfCFTA depends on finding a solution to the unreliability of electricity generation and transmission in many of our nations. But we need not imagine that the only way to solve this is through the installment of turbines for hydro generation, or that the only way to have the lights on in African homes is for each country to be left to its own devices. More than ever now, we need to be talking about one electric grid for Africa, not multiple grids for multiple countries. This idea can easily be applied to so many other areas like telecommunications and tourism, agriculture, and health. But the principle behind that is the same. Africans are inextricably linked by culture, history, geography, and ethnicity. And the implementation of the free trade area must ride on those links, not ignoring them. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much in absentia to His Excellency Dr. Lazarus Chakwera, and trust that you can see some of the key things that is highlighting, which dovetail with a lot of what has been said at this conference so far. So it looks like we are definitely hearing from the same source, and that's very, very encouraging. We do have to get into the afternoon's proceedings. We have a guest speech, I understand, from Dr. Neil Thompson. If that's lined up as well to play, that can go now, and then we will, Dr. King, my co-facilitator, will take over for the panel that will come thereafter. Technical team, if you can confirm Dr. Neil Thompson, and then we will take it from there. Just give me the thumbs up if it's all there. Otherwise, we'll go straight into the panel. Okay, that's not ready. So can I then invite Dr. King, you and, sorry, just a moment, come through, sir.
I wasn't sure whether I should walk up or I should be introduced another. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here also. Um, since we are talking about development generally, which of course includes trade, I thought I should start with a quick observation about what transpired just before lunch. And that has to do with what in development economics we call soft issues in development. That means our value system, our belief system, which includes, for instance, the pursuit of excellence, attention to detail. These are all very critical preconditions for competing and surviving in the global economy. And I noticed that we are yet to even pay attention to that. Sometimes we get straight to the middle of the debate or the argument and not deal with it. And I'll just give you a couple of examples to highlight the importance of soft issues in tackling the bigger challenges of development in Africa. The first one is what I experienced when I came in this morning to sign up. There was a list. And my first question was, is that in alphabetical order? They said, no, it's in just random order. It's simply not acceptable. It may sound trivial, it may sound insignificant, but it actually goes again to the issue, the heart, or the values of the people. What is so difficult about having a list of people in an alphabetical order. The technology is even there. Again, as I said, it may sound trivial and irrelevant, but trust me, it takes only one screw to bring an entire plane down. Therefore, every single detail of what you do is critical. The attention to detail is very critical. When I was in office, the same issue, because I noticed that we also started 30 minutes late. When I was in public office, it was something that I never joked with. Even when ministers were coming, it's 9 o'clock, I said, start the program and let the minister walk in here late. And people are shaking, no, no, say the minister will be angry. No, let the minister be angry. And so we started 30 minutes late. And that then carried over. As a result, some of the people have actually left. Honorable Speaker Gabra has left because it ate into his time. Somebody's lateness affected his own agenda. He's gone. What if he came here to give us $10 million? Now we would have lost. And then we'll be praying for more and more. It doesn't work that way. So again, we need to pay a great deal of attention to the soft issues of development, the issue of pride. I noticed that the AAU is one of the sponsors for this meeting. This is just a meeting. We're not launching a rocket that costs a lot of money, requiring skills. This is just a meeting, and we can't even pay for it. And we're sitting here talking big English about how Africa. So we need to, again, deal with these basics of development. Secondly, I would like to touch on some of the issues that were discussed here. I was very happy that they discussed them. And by the way, my name is Nimwe Thompson. You didn't. And I used to be the Director General of the National Development Planning Commission for Ghana. So a lot of these issues I'm very much interested in. We developed Ghana's 40-year development plan. It's a long-term plan that's supposed to tackle issues of values and, of course, structural and social transformation. I like very much some of the issues that were discussed here, but I'll touch on just a couple of them. The issue of education, I very much admire the young man who chose to be educated in Rwanda rather than some university abroad. I think I've seen him on WhatsApp before, and it's all well and good. But we shouldn't restrict ourselves in the world where knowledge is all over the place. So as commendable as that is, we should also be mindful that getting educated abroad is not necessarily a bad thing. But some of the professors who are teaching him in Rwanda may very well have been educated abroad. The Nigerian musician Fela said that he didn't really appreciate his Africanness until he went to the United States. And it happens to a lot of us like that. I'm called Nimwe, but I won't tell you the kind of name I took from here to the United States myself. It was embarrassing. But when I was in Ghana, I didn't see any problem with that. 3 European names. And I was walking around without even thinking. But we've been colonized. I understand that. Sometimes you have to travel to appreciate the seriousness of our mental colonization. We've been praising Kwame Nkrumah, but Nkrumah himself went to school in the States. That's when he decided to reject the name Francis and take on Nkrumah. So I appreciate our Africanness, our passion for things African, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. There's so many other people. Marcus Garvey, the person who gave us the name Pan-Africanism, George Padmore himself was educated in England. So it's a question of what you make of the education. I became a Garveyist by reading Marcus Garvey in New York. And it wasn't even here. I doubt that you would even find Marcus Garvey's book in any library here in Ghana. Several years ago, I got the whole volume, 9 volumes of Marcus Garvey's work, and donated it to the university. They can find it today as I speak. So yes, it's good that you are African at heart, but also be practical. There are a lot of books on Ghana today that you would not find in the university in Ghana, but if you go online, you'll find that they have it at Stanford, they have it at Yale, they have it at Columbia, and it's only there that you can find a book on your own country. These are some of the contradictions, all because of some of these mental issues. So we need to be careful about that. The issue of borrowing. I noticed a lot of calculations were made, 30 million Ghanaians, if everybody gives this, but you forget that about half of them are either under 15 or unemployed. So we are talking about 15 million Ghanaians, 70% of whom are in what is known as vulnerable employment. So you need to factor those in. That is not to say that borrowing is bad. There's not a single country today or in the past that didn't have to borrow to develop. As I speak with you today, the US has borrowed $1 trillion from China. They keep saying, well, Africa owes China 153 billion. They have borrowed $1 trillion US dollars. Check the composition of US foreign debt. 1 trillion. Another trillion from Japan. And it goes down the list, the Netherlands and so forth and so on. So again, it's not the borrowing per se, but what you do, I know Prof mentioned that, because all along we're trying to skirt around the elephant in the room, corruption and waste. You borrow, then what do you do with the money? When you have the time, Google World Bank loans for Japan, starting from 1953. It took about 35 loans from the World Bank. That's what made Japan what it is today. They took the loans, but they invested. Toyota, you see in the list, Toyota benefited from World Bank loan, and several other Japanese companies. So the problem, again, is not the borrowing, but the systems and how you use the debt. The biggest problem for Africa's debt is actually the quality and not the quantity of the debt. Our debt levels are actually low. But you borrow, in the case of Ghana, we borrow for state-owned enterprises. 2-3 years later, they don't pay back, and yet the money has to be paid. But since there's only so much that can go around, we then divert money from education and health to keep paying and all that. And talking about borrowing, the British, after the Second World War, they were so broke, they came to the Gold Coast, and guess what? They borrowed. We gave them 200 million pounds. That, of course, they said themselves. They borrowed, and then they set the interest rate themselves. But the important thing is that we gave Britain, a broken Britain, we gave them 200 million pounds after the Second World War. And that 200 million pounds is worth about 9.4 billion US dollars today. That's how much Ghana gave them. So as they say in Twi, you always need some assistance. But how you use it is what is important. Again, to use the Japanese experience, Japan's debt GDP ratio, I'm not really a big fan of that statistic, but I use it for purposes of argument. Their current debt GDP ratio is around 230%. Ours is around 72%, and we are trembling. Why? Because they have high quality debt. They know exactly what every single yen has been spent on. We don't have a clue. And sometimes I heard things like as much as 40% of our debt is dubious, money that's been borrowed and given to cronies and whatnot, and yet we have to pay. So let's not confuse the tool itself with the purposes of that. And I think I've touched on the issue of miscalculation of the population. It's not every one of the 30 million Ghanaians who will be capable of contributing. Whether we contribute locally, whether we borrow from abroad, it's ultimately the issue of transparency, accountability, efficiency, and how we put those to use. If we borrow, just imagine recently $100,000 per MP for V8. Well, you're always going to be in the hole. I don't know how many of you have been on YouTube and seen the Japanese Prime Minister's motorcade. It's about 6 cars. Have you seen that? It's on YouTube. And they only blow a whistle for him to go through. You come to Africa, you get about 20, 30 motorcades. Of course, you're always going to be poor. So let's be mindful of these issues. And that's just my preamble. Now let me go to some of the critical issues. I believe we need to be strategic. In the old days, they used to talk about the strategy of development. But within that, we need to be very, very tactical as to how we approach certain things. This is all well and good, the Continental Free Trade Agreement and our efforts to implement that. We've talked about infrastructure and the lack of it thereof. But we need to prioritize or strategize in this case. We cannot wait until we put in all the rail lines and highways and so forth and so on. But can we maybe start emphasizing service exports, where the infrastructure is relatively easier to put in place, while we are also working on hardcore infrastructure? But even then, the issue of values comes into place. Because look how long it took us just to try and broadcast the president of Malawi's speech from this morning till about what time? Is it 2 o'clock now? That's how long it took us. We just couldn't handle a simple thing like projecting a video from one part of Africa to another part. Meanwhile, as I speak with you, there are people in Florida in the United States sitting in front of television screens who can bomb this building in a matter of minutes. They guide a laser drone that can wipe out this building. in just a matter of minutes. And we cannot even project a simple video statement from an African elder. So how then can we trade in services? We need to start in trading services. Education is there, health is there, leisure, tourism, technical services, infrastructure installation is much more to our advantage than the fiscal one. Again, I'm not dismissing the importance of merchandise exports. They will come along. Mr. Adi talked about some of the challenges of building highways from Cairo to Nigeria and so forth and so on. That's very critical. But what about getting the IT, the digital infrastructure, top-notch, so that we can do just about anything, sell services among ourselves? Because we reached a stage where no one is going to wait for you and say, oh, Africa, you are behind, so we are going to wait for you until you catch up. They are moving. It's up to you to catch up. And it can be done. We have the people to do that. Unfortunately, we frustrate them and they leave. Earlier, we talked about the brain drain. I don't know if that is going to be discussed as part of this event, but it's equally important as we discuss these very issues. One of the things Nkrumah said, and I'm an Nkrumahist, was that where it took others 10 years, where it took them 100 years, we'll have to use 10 years. And where they walked, we'll have to run. So we cannot have a situation where a simple thing like transmitting a video image becomes a challenge when others are doing far more than that. It's simply not acceptable. And then you get the evidence of that in just about everywhere else you go. Go to the typical African government's website, and you get a sense of the poverty of the digital technology on the continent. Last night, as part of my preparation for today's event, I went to the Ghana Enterprises Agency's website, formerly NBSSI. Nice video of the CEO. She speaks eloquently. Thereafter, every link you clicked was dead. Every single link you clicked was dead. And then I went to the U.S. Trade Representative's website. Come and see the serious country versus the non-serious country. 50 states plus territories in the U.S. I clicked on Atlanta, Georgia. They have about 16 different areas, cities and towns, where they help them to export. That's just one state. And in the options, there's an option at the bottom that says problems exporting. If you're an American in Atlanta or anywhere in this, and you have problems exporting to Ghana, they have a line there. You go and you fill. They will send it to whoever it is, and before you know it, it's at the embassy here in Accra. And they're talking to the Minister of Trade. Why are you making it difficult for our people to export? We don't have these facilities. We don't. We simply, as the former president of Senegal once said, we like to float through a field of sensation, just floating through life and praying and hope that we get to our destination. No country has ever developed on the basis of prayer. The African needs to know that. No country has developed on the basis of prayer. Common sense, using your head, is what has gotten them ahead. And so we need, and I tell them, listen, China is an atheist state. They don't even pray. I know we pray today. China, they don't pray. But they are building highways. They are building speed trains. They are doing all sorts of things. And we are building a cathedral. It started at 200 million, then went to 250. Now this morning I read that it's going to be 350 US dollars. So we need to be strategic in terms of how we approach the issue of deficits in infrastructure. We don't have to wait until we have all the rails in place. We don't have to wait until all the highways are in place. Of course, there are the soft aspects of it also. Government services, port services, and other. We need to factor all those in there. So that's the second one. I'm going to move on to the third one. Since we're already running late, I'm not going to take up too much of your time. The third and final one actually deals with an area that's of great interest to me, and I've done quite a bit of research in that, which is local economic development. The national development, Ghana's economy, Nigeria's economy, Africa's economy is ultimately the aggregation of all local economic activities. So if you want Ghana's economy to grow dynamically and to be successful, you have to start from local communities. And that's where the challenge is. That is influenced by the structure of decentralization. How much power do local economies have in terms of mobilizing resources, in terms of financing infrastructure? These are all issues that we need to address, both at the policy level and also at the implementation level. In my research, for example, in the case, I looked at a number of districts in Ghana, and it was so, I can't even begin to describe my findings. So you hear a lot about the central region being the hub of tourism, Cape Coast being the hub of tourism. And I looked at their spending on infrastructure, and it's 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So how are you going to promote tourism? You're not even investing in infrastructure. There's another district I looked at. They had a very ambitious program for revenue mobilization to fill the potholes in the cities. And then someone calls them from Accra and says, stop collecting the revenue because you're making the government unpopular. And yet we sit here in Accra and attend such fancy conferences and think that everything is going to work. No, we need to look at the fundamentals. So on the basis, I actually reviewed our record of decentralization and local economic development. And I came up with 3, what I call the new local economic development framework. I prepared this report for the UN Capital Development Fund and the UN Economic Commission for Europe. They asked me to actually come up with a framework for a resilient economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And as part of that, I looked at these things. The issue of resilience, maybe we can discuss later on, but I would like to discuss just the 3 elements of a new local economic development strategy that we need to do to underpin this continental initiative. Because the goods and services that we want to export cannot be produced in a vacuum. Each and every item will have to be produced in a particular community. And how that community is structured, the nature of infrastructure, the nature of spatial planning. I cannot emphasize spatial planning enough. As part of the 40-year plan, a lot of you may not know this, because I know people complain that it's too long. It's long because there are certain key elements in there. Besides the plan itself for social economic transformation of Ghana, we had an infrastructure plan and then a spatial development framework. And the tagline in the spatial development framework is what? Space, efficiency, growth. If you don't plan your fiscal, your land use properly, you will always be internationally non-competitive, no matter how many conferences you have. And this is one of the challenges facing Africa because we didn't do proper spatial planning. Urbanization in Africa has failed to bring us the industrial and the development benefits that we always talk about. So instead of driving from point A to point B over here, in most African cities, you have to drive this way and go this way and go before you get here. Because they built all sorts of things here that make it impossible for you to get here. So now you have to go back there. What in Ghana we call lungu lungu. You have to travel back there. So instead of a 3-minute drive, it's going to take you about 30 minutes to get there. And it's a universal fact. This is not one of colonialism. No, it's a universal fact. If you don't have your infrastructure and land use planning properly, you are not going to be competitive. And I'll give you the example of the US city of Pittsburgh. I used to work in the budget office there. In Pittsburgh, if you've been to Pittsburgh, it's actually a valley with hills and all that, with the roads going on the bridges and so forth and so on. And in the US, cities actually, mayors travel around the US to try and bring in investors. And the investors told the mayor, there's no way we'll come into your city unless you give us what? Bypasses. Now, bypass the city itself. Because if we are to convey our goods and services through the city, traffic and everything is going to be a problem for us. So how we plan our fiscal space is critical. Unfortunately, for us, if you review the record of development in Africa, spatial planning has not been a priority. As I said, we've developed that, and hopefully successive governments would take advantage of that. And it has to be always infrastructure and spatial planning. Where are you going to have your industries? One of the reasons why we couldn't ration electricity the last time we had doomsday power outages was that both industrial and residential units were mixed together. So you couldn't, for instance, have electricity during the day for industry, and it became completely chaotic. And this is what often happens. So we need to also pay attention to that aspect of development. And then there's an issue, again, staying at local economic development. Business services. I came up with 3 pillars. The first one is business development. The second one is infrastructure and spatial development. And the third one is social and economic development. These 3 must go together. I started in the middle with infrastructure and spatial development. But let me go to the first one, which is business development. It means that we need an entrepreneurial state, a state that's very responsive to the needs of the business community. Again, they do this in the US so well. You see, the Office of Special Trade Representative in the US is actually directly under the office of the president. It's in the White House. It shows the amount of attention they pay to that. Again, in doing my research last night, I went to the Ghana Enterprises Agency's website. They have 173 branches. That means 173 districts out of 260 districts. That is simply unacceptable. And that's just Ghana. I can just imagine the situation in other areas. And when I was doing my research in the districts, I actually met the officers for they're called the BACs, Business Assistance Centers. I met them, and they're all sitting there doing nothing. And we're sitting here in Accra talking about dreaming about increasing exports when the basis of production itself has been neglected. And so you're always going to end up in some sort of stagnation. When you have the time, you should go to the Ghana Export Promotion Authority's website and check the trends in non-traditional exports. It's virtually flat, around $2 billion every single year that I've been following them. Because the basis of production, infrastructure, and by the way, added to infrastructure is the issue of logistics. We also need to look at those things. So business services to local businesses is very, very, very critical. And then the third and final pillar that I've researched into is social and economic development. Some of it was discussed here. You need the skills. I remember talking to a contractor in Agripreneurship, and his biggest problem is getting skilled labor. They're simply not there. A lot of them have moved to Accra to indulge in all sorts of petty trading. In fact, it's one of the biggest contradictions of our development. And again, if you go through the literature, development literature, they tell you about how today's industrialized nations followed a different path. And this is something we need to bear in mind because they were colonizers. They had different options than we do. And therefore, we necessarily have to approach things differently. They had captive markets for everything. They have captive markets for raw materials, and they have captive markets for what? Finished products. We don't have that. So they were moving straight from farms to factories. And here, they come from the farms to what? There are no factories, so they end up where? In the streets, selling. And then the lack of strategic thinking at the highest level of leadership is another major obstacle. I belong to a platform where I just read this morning that Turkey is going to organize a Turkey Africa conference. One country is going to gather 54 other African heads of state and give them a lecture. And the headline is always to improve trade. But it's actually a euphemism for increase Turkey's exports to your continent. But it's disguised. And what pains me is that Turkey has never hidden its imperial ambitions in Africa. It's all over on the internet. It talks about projecting its power. The number of embassies they've opened up, they don't hide it at all. But because our leaders are so close-minded, they don't read. They go to these things. So this is Turkey. One country is going to snap its finger like this, and 54 African heads of states or their representatives are going to go to, or just to go in there. The last one was with India. India. Don't forget, India, sometimes, depending on the exchange rate, Ghana's per capita GDP is even higher than that of India. The same population of Africa, the same GDP of Africa, but India snapped its fingers and African leaders went to Delhi. I don't know how many of you saw the picture of African leaders wearing the Indian traditional outfits. So embarrassing. And then at the end of the summit, and this is the catch, at the end of the summit, they gave African leaders, quote unquote, loans to import what? Indian manufacturers. You get the trick. They'll tell you that it's subsidized loans, which is true, but it's meant to do what? Support Indian industrialization. But because we are not thinking, we do that. So we are supporting Indian industrialization. We are supporting Indian job creation. Now, what do we get in return, you ask yourself? There's a free book on the internet called Africa's Silk Road. S-I-L-K, Africa's Silk Road. I beg you to download it and read it and see how India's foreign policy and commercial policy are undermining African industrialization, including the destruction of the cashew industry in Ghana. But nobody wants to listen. But the evidence is there that India's foreign policy is responsible largely for the destruction of the cashew industry in Ghana. But we are so easily seduced by things like loans, and then we go and take it, and then we took something like $100 million US. Initially, it started, by the way, as 30 million to build where the president is, Jubilee House. I don't know how many of you remember the story. We went to India for $30 million loan for rural electrification, again, to buy Indian equipment. And then casually, one of our leaders asked the Indians for another $30 million to renovate our former president's residence. But the Indians were very smart. They realized, or they recognized a business opportunity right away, and they signed on it, knowing that they will escalate the cost later on. So by the time they were done, it was almost $100 million US. Even the pavement blocks were imported from India. And the electrical sockets were Indian types. They were not even Ghanaian types. I know because I used to have my office there. So every time you moved in there, you had to then replace it with the Ghanaian thing. So in short, it's good for us to be passionate about being African. There's nothing wrong with that. We need to be more African. But we should also understand the ways of the world. There's no charity out there. Everybody who helps you in a global context always wants something. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't engage in the rest of the world. Otherwise, we'll also be selling ourselves short. But we should engage, but in the process also learn about how the world works. Let me finish with the story I heard, because it keeps showing, reflecting in various ways about the early years of slavery in the Gold Coast, especially here in Accra. I understand the white people used to put cheap rum in bowls, and they will leave them at the coast, right here at Osu. They will leave the rum, the liquor, at night, overnight, and the Africans will come overnight, thinking that they found free rum. They will drink, get drunk. In the morning, the white people will come and what? Just pick them up, tie them up, and go and put them in the belly of the ships. And that was the beginning of how slavery started here. So let's be very careful. You shouldn't be having someone, your competitor, financing your conference on international trade. It doesn't work like that. There's no charity out there. Thank you.
I don't know what to say to that, because that was just so sumptuous, wasn't it? Thank you so much for such a resounding presentation. Moral of the story, don't drink and drive. So it's my privilege really to introduce my what should I call you? He's already in trouble. My co-moderator, Dr. King, who's just arrived a few minutes ago, and straight into, she hasn't even been to our hotel room, but straight into action. So I really want to appreciate her being here with us. And so, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sam. I call him that way because he's my brother. And I do want to take this time to tell you welcome. And I do also want to apologize for coming in late. It's been quite a bit, but we have folks here who make me believe that we're going to transform Africa together. You know, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. It's been since Saturday that I left Chicago. I mean, on my way leaving Chicago to get here on Sunday. It just did not happen. But folks were working hard, and I'm here. To God be the glory. And thank you for having me. Again, apologies for being late. At this moment, I want to thank Dr. Thompson The way he was speaking, this guy has got to be a planner. And you know, you are planning to fail if you do not have a plan. You did not hear me. We hear that all the time in business. You don't have a business plan, you're already planning to fail. And we see that happening with a lot of businesses. So as a continent, I'm thankful that AfCFTA came to place and we are all working to promote it, but we need to go beyond and make sure we strategize and have a plan all through it. I want to quickly touch on some of the things that he has mentioned here. Dr. Sam actually talked about the moral of it. If there was anything that I heard, he said Africans must be patriotic, whether you are in leadership or not. And what is leadership? Leadership is simply influence. Can you influence somebody? You don't have to have a title to be a leader. But if you can influence somebody to do good, you are a leader, and that cuts through all the ranks. So, ladies and gentlemen, he also touched on critical thinking. When you like yourself, you love yourself, together we want to build the Africa that we want to see, not what the leaders should do. Leaders, of course, they have their role. You and I, we all have our roles to play. So we're going to step to the plate. We're going to get on the podium. We're going to do what needs to be done. If I want to mention the names of people today, I might miss them out and they might get mad at me, but I'm not going to mention them. Folks who did everything to make sure I got on that plane yesterday and got here, we have shown tenacity and we are all going to work together. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it. At this moment, I do have a real quick announcement. For those who have come in, they are registered participants. Your list is out there in the lobby. Please make sure you sign behind your name. We do want to make sure of the folks that are here. All right? And I do want to thank you, Neka. Is Eden here in the house? Eden, are you in the house? Is she here? Oh, okay. All right, these are some of the folks that have been working very hard. We are thankful to them for doing the best they can to sponsor this event. And every single one of you, the Chamber, Chamber of Commerce of Ghana, and all, yes. Lift up your hand. Can we give them all a hand? I'm not doing a vote of thanks now, but if something is good, we're not going to put it at the back. We're going to bring it up. And many other ones. At this moment, we want to call on the panelists. Our time is fast spent, so we're going to try and keep it down as much as possible. And please, when we call up your name for the agricultural sector, would you please come right out and occupy these lovely seats? All right? First on the list is Dr. Sakara Foster. Dr. Foster, are you in the house? Oh, he's not here. Does he have a representative? He's going to be virtual. All right, Dr. Sakara Foster. Some folks in this panel are going to be virtual. Please be ready. So when we call onto you, and technical folks, would you please get them all set and ready? Dr. Bako. Dr. Bako. Oh, yes, right here. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Okay, and we have here Professor Gideon Onwokwesi. I know he's going to be online. Dr. Gideon, please be ready so when we call on you, you can speak. Mr. Kweme Jantua. Mr. Kweme. Please make yourself comfortable. Mr. Ngweso. Tosa Ngweso? He's not here? Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started, please. If you see any of these people maybe coming, you can give us a little nudge, and we want to bring them up here. All right. What we're going to do, because the time is fast spent, Are we going to have a couple of minutes or so and have the panelists introduce themselves, and then we move ahead? But before they do, I do want to remind you what this session is all about. Envisioning. Envisioning. It's got a lot to do with planning. It's got a lot to do with critical thinking and maximizing agricultural potential in regional economic communities and after. So that's what this panel is going to be talking about. So we're going to sort of just tune our mind in that direction while I have the first panelist go right ahead and introduce himself. Please mention your name, sir, and go from there. Yes, please, 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kwame Jantua. I am a lawyer by profession, and my daily bread is in the oil and gas industry. However, I have a strong affiliation with agriculture. I'm also a cocoa farmer. My father left me a 750-acre cocoa farm, so I've had to migrate into agriculture. And agriculture, I think, is the bedrock of everything we do, because you need to eat, you need to grow food, you need to water food, you need the sunshine to shine on the food you're growing. And so agriculture is key. How we map it together in Africa to turn agriculture into a business is the key question we need to answer. And whether the AfCFTA, if I'm writing the pronunciation, whether that is the test, that is the platform that is going to change agriculture into big business for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're just going to take 2 minutes and quickly introduce ourselves. Don't you just love the gentleman? All right, you're not showing it. We're going to show some love in this place, okay? All right, let's get the place moving. All right, we give him a quick hand. Thank you so much, sir. Before we have someone here on the stage, let's get to someone online. Dr. Sakara Foster, would you please greet the house by just introducing yourself?
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Abu Sakara Foster. I'm a development practitioner in agriculture by training and an entrepreneur in agribusiness. I run a farm and other businesses as well. I've been involved in development agriculture for over 30 years in different countries, both in Africa and Latin America and Asia. I'm now in Ghana, work consultancy as well in agricultural development. I'm happy to be here, and I wish you all a good afternoon's participation from my colleagues from Tanzania. Karibu sana nyumbani yako.
All right, now, thank you so much, and please welcome. Let's give him a big hand. All right, we're going to grab someone that is right here. We might go to the next gentleman. If you would please introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you so much. I'm called Dr. Henry Clark Kisembo. I'm the Chief Managing Partner at Development Associates Link International. Been 16 years plus in private business, equity and investment. Done a lot of agriculture finance. I hold a PhD in financial economics, and I hold a PhD in development finance. And I'm also in the academia. I lecture in a number of universities. What you would define as a serial investor and entrepreneur. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Don't we love it? All right, we have quite some skills in Africa, and we know we're going to transform this continent. I'm going to pick somebody online at this moment. We call on Professor Gideon Onuokwesi.
Thank you very much. Just as you've heard, Gideon Onwekusi, and a real entrepreneur, and specialization in agripreneurship, and a lecturer in Michael Obra University of Agriculture in Umudike, Nigeria, and been in this business of agripreneurship for more than 22 years, working with young people, training young people, and encouraging them to enter into agripreneurship. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let's give him a big hand. There are folks already, of course, working in the field, and we want to hear from them. I'm going to grab our gentleman in the middle to introduce himself.
Thank you very much. My name is Abubakar. I'm privileged to be the president of the Logos Rema Foundation for Leadership Resource Development. We do leadership development training for the various sectors of the society. And I was privileged to have lectured in the university up till 1987 when I stopped lecturing. And I have been privileged to consult and also be part of advisory boards, one of which is the Geneva Institute for Leadership and Public Policy. I'm on their international advisory board. I think I'll stop there.
Yeah, I know. When a resume is so long, sometimes it's hard to know where to stop. But he's doing a good job to just say, I'm going to hold up for now. Can we just give him a hand too? Thank you so much, sir. At this moment, do we have anybody else online? Okay. We have about 5 in the panel. What we're going to be talking about is how do we envision, how do we begin to think critically? Any continent, any household, any country that does not know how to feed its people, you're looking at folks that are starving to death. What else can you do when you're not healthy? All right? So it's all about food. And what we're talking about here is not we just throw something on the ground and then we pick it up and we put it on the table. It's going to be the entire enchilada. We're going to move through it, including transportation, distribution, preservation, packaging, all of that. We're going to turn it up a notch. It's going to be bigger and better than what we've had before. We have land in Africa, all right? And how can we get our fruits or our vegetables or our crops that would just start out? It might take, I don't know, 6 months before they get somewhere. How can we bring that into 3 months or less? How can we do research? And, of course, that's why APSS is collaborating with universities. All right, shall we give APSS a big hand? All right. So all the things, and many of them are two here, are professors and universities teaching students. We want to talk about what can we do better? What can we do moving from what we are training into implementation so Africa can have enough food to eat and begin inter-regional, all right? Inter-regional training in this God-given free trade area. Okay, so at this moment, I'm going to start with somebody online at this moment. Professor Onokwesi, you are a professor in Agricultural University. It's a university, one institution, one academic citadel, and all they do is train students on agriculture. And of course, there are many components to that. So, what the panelists are going to be talking about are, what are the issues? What are the challenges? What are solutions? What have been done already to try to solve some of these problems? What are your proposed policy recommendations that can make AfCFTA work, that can also wake up, and I want to digress here a little bit. I missed the big conversation, but I heard it was really good. But we want to continue in that, promoting economy of scale. What are we going to do to take Africa to a point where everybody else come to find food here? Okay? So let's start out with Professor Gideon. Please, you have 5 minutes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Number one, we've been talking about developing Africa and the need to transform Africa agriculturally. The modernization of agriculture in developing countries is very, very important. So, and it should be on the basis of the following: the necessity to transform traditional agriculture, natural resource, land and water, land use in subsistence agriculture and potentials for development, the deterioration of natural resource, then human resources, then generation of new technology, effective transfer of new technology, then the green revolution and human labor, animal fraction and mechanization, then provision of essential conditions for modernization and development planning and strategy. Now, having looked at this, there should be a shift from the agriculture as we know it to agribusiness, which is very, very essential pathway to revitalize the agricultural system in Africa, and to make more attractive and profitable venture. That is now where we come into agripreneurship. One may ask, what do we mean by agripreneurship? Agripreneurship is the profitable marriage of agriculture and entrepreneurship. Agripreneurship turn your farm into agribusiness. So the term agripreneurship is synonymous with entrepreneurship in agriculture and referred to agribusiness establishments in agriculture and allied sectors. Now, having said this, agriculture have the potential to contribute to a range of social and economic developments, such as employment generation, income generation, poverty reduction, and improvement in nutrition, health, and overall security in the national economy. So agripreneurship has potential to generate growth, diversifying income, providing widespread employment and entrepreneurial opportunities in the rural areas. And what shall we do to move forward? We got to incorporate the young people into agripreneurship. We can see that today in Africa, a lot of young people are leaving school. A lot of young people are graduating from the university and becoming unemployed. How do we channel them into a production? So the way out, the new way, the new normal should be introducing agripreneurship today, because agriculture is the way out. We need to look at what is the problem of these young people. How do we encourage these young people to go into agripreneurship? In fact, my university, we established a department of entrepreneurship and Center for Entrepreneurship. But in our own department, we now try to use all those principles in entrepreneurship into agriculture in order to encourage these young people so that they can practice agriculture fully with the business part of it. And this will enhance they are employed as soon as they graduate from the university. So I believe that agripreneurship is a way out to make things work out in Africa, as the case may be. Thank you very much.
All right, now, can we give him a hand as well? If somebody says something, I know it might take a little bit of time, but we do want to encourage our speakers. Somebody says something that you enjoy, that's okay. Give him a thumbs up, all right? A little bit of a clapping and give him a little more or her energy. Professor Gideon, we truly appreciate you. I believe what we heard there was the necessity of agriculture, which we cannot overemphasize, and had talked about agripreneurship. So important, the involvement of men and women. That's a real big deal. As we are talking about the development in Africa, we're looking at all aspects of it, including the SDGs and all that, to make sure it is incorporated as we work up our regional economic communities and incorporating AfCFTA to get to where it needs to go and provide the results and outcomes that we want to see. Thank you so much, Dr. Gideon. We're going to move next to, let's see here, Dr. Abu.
Thank you very much. I believe it's important for us in Africa to remember he who cannot feed himself will not be respected by those outside. So as much as we want to look at various kinds of crops, cash crops, you know, many times when we talk about even agricultural growth, a lot of times what we capture in our GDP has to do with those crops like cocoa and all the others, for example, for Ghana. Could we diversify, not throw that away, but ensure that we start with those that are staples and make sure we're self-sufficient? We are not importing, for example, rice. By now, we should have been self-sufficient in rice production, because there are certain portions of Ghana, for example, that should be able to grow rice 3 times a year. Then you have what I will call a regionalization of specific specialized crops, and ensuring we also do our best to give our support to those particular regions that are very good in those areas, so they can produce maybe 1 billion trees of that or whatever it is that they're supposed to be producing, and then they can now be sharing around to ensure also that the distribution network is such that there are no bottlenecks. We ensure we give special consideration to intra-African trade as against the importation. I don't know why it appears we seem not to have protection of industry, you know, import substitution, and all of that being given priorities when we're dealing with issues in that respect. Apart from that, Africa is the only continent that has 4 of the hemispheres. No other continent in the world has the 4 hemispheres. The 4 hemispheres, namely northern, southern, eastern, western. And there are certain things that can be grown in the Mediterranean region that North Africa can grow. Things that were meant for places like Oceania, I used to say Oceania, but they corrected me. Oceania and Antarctica, you have in SADC region, you know, some of the things that they can grow there. Then you have things that were meant for Asia, India, some of those places. East Africa, some portions are able to. Then West Africa here, I don't need to talk about, you know, what we have, Brazil, all those places. So why don't we do our best to make sure that we get the most out of it, not only in terms of just things, but the weather conditions, the time of the year. For example, since I used mangoes earlier, I might as well just use that. If you want to grow mangoes, you can actually have mangoes that are fresh around the year, because all you need to do is make sure you are helping the region that has the mango season to grow the most at that time. And then we talked about infrastructure already. It's been talked about quite a bit. Let me touch on the aspect of planning. Agricultural planning, agricultural implementation, agricultural monitoring, and then evaluation for further planning. And for the plans, I hope our brother Neil Thompson is still around. When it comes to the aspect of planning, I advocate anywhere I go for 50-year development plan, not 40-year, because there is a principle for that. You know, 7 sabbaticals, which is 7 times 7, 49 years. Then the last year is for evaluation of the 7 sabbaticals, so 50-year development plan. And I would like to recommend that every nation for agriculture and every other area, we should make sure at least these 2 institutions are given priority in every nation: the National Development Planning Commission and the National Center for Civic Education. So that then, as we're saying, we go to the locals and educate them with even wordless books. I believe some of us here are very familiar with Akash tablets that are better than, that's why I call for the iPad. I'm not against iPad, but they are as functional as an iPad by Indians, Akash tablets. And they are only $35 a piece. And the first time I was made aware of that, the government had ordered 90 million of the Akash tablets because they wanted to distribute. And they didn't have to give them only to those who could read and write, because they actually had wordless, you know, teaching and instruction in the local language of the people. So instead of saying this number of feet, they talk about the size of your foot and say this number of your feet you would count before you plant. And you are listening in your local language and you are watching what they are showing you. I want to stop there because I'm conscious of the time. I hope I've been able to, you know, contribute a little.
Thank you so much. We know they have a whole lot to offer. Our time is limited, and we truly, truly appreciate them for being conscious of the time. At this moment, we're going to move to the next panelist on ground. If you could please go right ahead and give us your take on agricultural envisioning implementation in the case of Africa.
Hello?
Look, I will start from where my brother left off. He indicated that some government, was it your government, that bought these, laptops? Akash tablets. We're talking about AfCFTA. Is that not capital flight? Why don't we manufacture them here in Africa?
Sorry, I talked about the Indian government buying for its people, the Akash tablets.
Not the African government's buying. Okay, so we replicate. What doesn't China replicate? They replicate the bad ones and they replicate the good ones. Look, for me, agriculture is a two-system thing. The first thing is the domestic market, what we grow to eat. The second thing is the export market, what we grow to export. But listen to this. If what we're growing to eat does not have the quality of what we're going to export, then we are not going anywhere. If we're going to export agricultural produce, including adding value, then what we export into Africa, we should be able to export into Europe. We should be able to look at the kind of packaging. Look, I was in the agricultural industry. When I finished law school in the UK, I practiced for 2 years and decided to go into agriculture. Ask me what I went into. I went into produce. I was importing produce into the UK. This was late 90s, early 90s. And I became one of the biggest exotic produce companies in the UK. And you know what they taught me? They said to me, look, young man, if you want to do this business, the first thing you should know is that your packaging should look like a box of chocolates. Why? Because out there, they buy by sight. In Africa, we buy by taste. We would taste it first. Oh, it's nice, it's not nice, it's nice, not nice. There, they buy by looking at the box. So your advertising on your box is key. If we are going to be able to survive AfCFTA, then we need to understand what it takes to get into the market. And what do I mean by that? We need to understand the structure of manufacturing. We need to understand the structure of cost. We need to understand the structure of availability of finance. We need to understand the structure of capacity and capability. We need to understand the structure of adequate, effective modern transportation systems, which includes good roads, which includes rail, sea transport, and effective, and very important, most of you from here are coming from other parts of Africa. If we don't have an effective public transport system here, how do you get here? That is key. That is key in developing the agricultural sector in country. The structure of certification, which is a big problem for Africa, to be able to certify the products we take out there. The structure of continuous training of the country's human resource. And we think that the gold and the diamonds and the oil is what is the best human resource we have. The best human resource any country has is its people. And if you don't train these people to understand what it takes to operationalize this trade zone, we aren't going anywhere. The structure of technology, and most importantly for me, the structure of honesty, time management, discipline, and a proper and better understanding of who the competition is, both domestically and both internationally. If I am growing pepper, and you are growing pepper, and I don't know who my competition is, what does it do to the price of pepper? We've got to be able, most of all, to have a structured land tenure system, which is a huge problem in Africa. Huge problem in Africa. Look, all these international companies that come in here, and my brother Nimoy talked about it. I was on the National Development Planning Commission with him. He was my boss. We were part of the team that did the 40-year National Development Plan, and I was part of the team that structured a lot of the energy sector. But remember, they have personal interest and no personal friends. They come in, they bring the money in, they use it for their benefit, and they take it back out. And what do? We sit and we watch. The gentleman, yes, when he was speaking, he was talking about, then we go to, Turkey is inviting heads of states. What is most important to us? It's not the fact that we are going into Turkey. What is most important to us is that we are going to get per diem. Because love for country isn't there when we are going out there. It's love for self. And if we don't stop this love for self, unfortunately, the children that are coming up, who are going to take over from us, I am 63 now. In the next how many years, I'll pass my sell-by date. And others, young people, will have to take over. Are we training them well enough to understand what it means to go into the agricultural sector? Are we being able to do that? But we should be able to do that. And the private sector, as the private sector, unfortunately also go partisan. And we all know, sitting here, we all know what our governments can do. We all know what our governments are capable of doing. As private sector, we try and push. My president of the Chamber of Commerce, he's sitting here, and he can tell you what it takes for Ghanaian private sector to turn the head of government for things to happen. If the agricultural sector is going to work, we've got to be able to understand what it takes to export one mango, to export one pineapple, to export one pawpaw, to export one pepper. And to conclude, we need to do research, continuous research. Let me end by saying this. In Ghana, we grow pineapples, don't we? We throw the crown away, don't we? Do you know what we use the crown for? Right now, in China, the demand for pineapple crowns, we can't even be able to supply. And ask me what they use them for. You see the ropes that hold ships. Try breaking the leaf of a pineapple, the crown. Try breaking it. No way, you have to cut it. And that is what they use to manufacture ropes in China. And what do we do here? We throw it away. We throw it away. If we do not understand what it takes to be able to export agriculture and good quality products, then don't let us start AfCFTA. Thank you.
So, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm hearing myself. Both of them are very important in international trade. Yes, it's within the continent. We're talking about export first. We're feeding ourselves, trading with each other, and of course, being the ones to provide to the rest of the world. And many other things like manufacturing, processing, preserving, and all that. Very important. Our time is going, and I'm going to bring in our next speaker online. Dr. Foster, thank you so much for your patience. You've been there a long time. We appreciate you hanging around to speak to us. Would you please have the floor, sir?
Thank you very much. I think I'll get straight to the issue. I'll try and follow the framework that was laid out in the lead speaker's discussion. Africa has $2.6 trillion GDP, of which we hope in the next 5 years to get $5.6 trillion GDP. Our share of the global market is still 3%. So obviously, a lot of this will have to come from inter-African trade. The question then is, how do we get this extra amount, and what portion of that will be contributed by agriculture? Right now, agriculture contributes 3.55% of global GDP, industry 24%, and services 64%. That does not mirror what we have in Africa here, and we need to increase the amount of contribution from GDP in agriculture. We have the arable land, we have the water, But more land and more water is not what is critical at this time. What is critical at this time is putting to use what we already have and making sure that the transaction costs associated with that are competitive in our own domestic marketplace before we start arguing for exporting and competing for a global market space. Because already we have $18.5 billion that we're importing in food. So if we concentrate, according to the spatial planning, looking at the tree crops area, the cereals area in terms of rice and maize and tubers, and then the small grains area in terms of sorghum and millets. All across Africa, we have a belt that produces these things. So what we need to do is look at how within our spatial planning, we can make sure that we don't transport the goods too far before they're processed, because transportation costs are the most significant costs that make our transaction costs uncompetitive. So we need to look at that. In that vein, we need to look at how the population, Africa's 1.38 billion population, is spread around, and also look at how we access this population where they're at. One of the key things we need to do is use the inland rivers. Europe developed with its rivers before it went into trains and aeroplanes. Much of the African population, even though it's on the coast now, a lot of it is still inland. And we have the Senegambia River, the Niger River running through there. We have the Volta Lake rivers running in Ghana. We also have in Mozambique, the Zambezi, and other rivers running inland. We need to use those inland rivers as our first way of reducing our transaction costs, because waterways are the cheapest form of reducing transaction costs. And also, incidentally for us, they go where the population is. We can't adopt other types of infrastructure strategies that don't fit with our own spatial pattern and distribution of people and the outlay of our natural resources. So I would give that the first priority. The other priority that we need to look at in reducing the transaction costs, of course, is looking at the railways. And in this, I'll say we first look at how we extend the railways from the point of where the waterways finish further inland. So that way we lay less railway track, but also look at how we strategically connect them across countries so that we go from, say, Djibouti across Sudan into, Mali, Niger, and up at Senegal. If each country does its part and we have that as our continental strategy, we can do that one. There's a lower one which we can look at coming from Mombasa, through Congo, through Cameroon, Central African Republic, etc., to Lagos and Accra. And then one going down from Cameroon to Southern Africa. If we want to connect the continent and do trade amongst ourselves, we must first have these infrastructure in place. But we can begin on the lowest rung using the waterways, because already in ancient times, that is how we traded. When the Europeans came, that is how they moved around Africa. So we already have this, and we can optimize the use of this. Now, the other issue which I think we need to look at, which is strategic, is the policy area and leadership. My colleague talked about this, but I want to talk about it in a very different context. We talk about private sector in Africa as if everybody wants private sector. Yes, they do, but they do not want private sector to be more powerful than the public sector. That is the state of mind of our political leadership. Now, if that were the case, you wouldn't have the system of patronage that has emasculated the private sector from growing. Now, if the political leadership says they're keen on private sector, yes, they're keen to be the private sector themselves, That is another tendency which is happening in Africa, where the real entrepreneurs are at the bottom of the rung, and the pseudo-entrepreneurs from the public sector take all the business opportunity, the big ones, and emasculate the growth of the real private sector, because with them, their businesses come in and out of government. And that is another big headache that we must look at. And we need to begin to form strong business associations. Now, that takes me to one point, which I'll just go back and touch on. If we are to have people listening to our own business people, as policymakers should listen, then we have to be more proactive. This conference that we have said the EU has paid for, there's no reason why our own private sector, if they felt that conferences like this really produce the kind of outcome that policymakers would take and implement, if they felt that, they would have funded it. And they can fund it. It's not too much for them. The fact that they have not funded it and they are not in the forefront of it itself now makes it difficult, because there's a gap between people who belong to CSOs, people who may not be just marginally business people, and people who are in policy. Are we the ones to speak for them? When Dangote decided to get into agriculture, what did not change in Nigeria? Because he had the financial muscle to talk to the political leaders to make sure the right things were done. And what he did in maybe 5-10 minutes of meeting was more than all the World Bank conferences that had been organized hitherto. So we need to make sure that the real private sector is driving the agenda and not otherwise. Going along that tangent, I'd like to focus on two key things: the long-term National Development Plan and its role in planning and development and investment. It's all well and good to have the National Development Plan. What if the policymakers decide not to use it? As indeed they have in Ghana. Why? Because manifestos override the National Development Plan. They put it aside. It's my manifesto. I've come in, and then they pick a few things and they do that. What is the net result of that? You are not following a plan. You have disjointed implementation of activities. You have this lack of continuity of projects. You accumulate judgment debts because you cancel contracts. All these are normal fare. We see it after every election. It's not like we're making it up. Right now, if you want to go and Google and look around the press, you see even debts that we're fighting in abroad. So this basically means that something more is required beyond the National Development Plan, which I advocate for strongly, which is an entrenchment of the National Development Plan in the Constitution, so that successive governments are bound to follow it. And you follow it in the segments. Our colleague mentioned about the 7 years. So why don't we have 7-year terms? Why don't we have 7-year terms and then the National Development Plan broken into 7-year development plans? That way, we know that any government that comes, you are clear what your targets are going to be. Nobody is spelling out for you exactly how to spend pennies within that entrenched national plan. No, it sets out the broad framework and the goals and the targets. And if you don't finish these, you don't move on to the next ones. And that way you have the continuity. And we can't go back to the situation where we have dictatorships who rule for 40 years and then be able to have that continuity. That's not what we are advocating. In the absence of that, you commit yourself to the National Development Plan so that successive governments will perceive it and there will be that continuity. If we don't do these things, we will not only not be able to do our own internal national development planning, but even those things that we need to do to connect the continent across, the continent, they won't happen. Because if it's not happening in your own house, it's certainly not happening outside your house. So with these few points, I'd like to conclude also with the youth in agriculture. The youth in agriculture are going to be the majority. Most of the people are old now, they're tired. They're diminishing in labor productivity, etc. Let's not even talk about that. Let's talk about how we attract the youth into agriculture. Now, What statement do I use to attract the youth in agriculture? Oh, youth, I'd like to attract you to become a low income, low scale, small scale farmer in agriculture. Or youth, I'd like to attract you to come into a middle income status with medium scale farming. Or youth, I'd like to attract you to come into large scale commercial farming and high income. Obviously, the latter is unrealistic. They don't have the skills, they don't have the resources to go there. So let's not even talk about it. But certainly, you can't expect them to come into low scale, low income agriculture. They're not interested. They want to be like their other colleagues who have jobs in other areas. Now, fortunately, we have gone past this thing of a job in a tie and a suit being what everybody is looking for. I can tell you categorically that today's youth are not looking for that. They're looking to make money and have a standard of living that is commensurate with their colleagues who are either in the public sector or whatever services industry. So if we concentrate then on how we bring the youth into medium scale agriculture, then we can talk about the scale that we need to do that with, the technologies that we need to do that with, the market linkages that we need to do that with, then the spatial planning begins to take root, because it is not just a general statement. Specific things at specific locations must be done. Now we come to the elephant in the room. Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to finance it? Cost of capital. If it is profitable, ultimately it will finance itself. But initially, the capital has to go in there. Take a look at many of these African countries. And I want to use my own country as an example. Interest rate as 26%, which is the same as for commercial trade. What crop are you going to grow at 26% interest rate to make money? If you have 100,000 Ghana cedis or 1 million Ghana cedis, and you put it in the bank, and you get 260,000 at the end of the year, risk-free, then you can go and play golf. And that is why the cost of capital being so high is what is encouraging rich Africans to invest their monies in banks instead of investing their monies in agriculture and industry. Thank you very much.
Do not say I told you so. We have the best of the best, and they don't have enough time to view or give us their views and their points. But we're going to have some sessions on implementation. We want to be able to get in our audience. We have just one more speaker. If you can do us a favor, sir, and kind of cut down on the time so we can have audience view before we get into the next one, we'll truly appreciate that. Would you please go right ahead? All right. His focus has been on cutting down on importation. One of the speakers talked about export, and this one talks about importation. We need to cut that down. We've got to do both for us to be successful in agriculture. And cost reduction, being strategic, private sector and the public sector working together. Hopefully we can have a little session to talk about that. APSS, yes, it's a think tank, okay? But we are big on implementation. We've been doing quite a bit of talking. APSS has come alongside to be able to work with the public, to be able to work with the private, to be able to work with the civil societies and everybody. All that we've been talking about, all that has been put together, it's about time to put it into work. So this is what it's all about. We're going to have the last speaker speak for us, and then we have a little time for audience participation before we move right ahead. Could you please go ahead, sir?
Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate. I'll try as much as possible to utilize the time very efficiently, and I'll raise just a few points. In the implementation of CFTA, I think that in agriculture development, we need to focus on what the real take homes or the objectives and what would lead to the buy-in of the majority of the population on the continent. Now we all know that not only in Uganda, the country I come from, but also on the continent, almost 70% to 75 are considered as youth. Now, when I was growing up, uh, agriculture was considered to be uh, one of those jobs for peasants, minnows, or a low job. Then the other part is that if at all in school a punishment was to be given, it was considered that you go and dig a certain chunk. So it was demonized at a certain point. Now it's time to popularize agriculture even before bringing in all these other aspects that we are all talking about. It's good to do research and development. It's good to talk about the export, import, and all that. But we in the private sector, and I'm going to talk on behalf of the private sector, we believe that where money is, where the currency is where we go. It's as simple as that. That's the logic. If you don't show me the money, I have no business with you. And you show me the money based on quality and the quantity. Now, what am I trying to get to? I'm trying to get to agriculture financing. Academia does the research and development. Government will come in for policy issues and enabling environment. Then there will be systems which will enhance infrastructure, transport, communication. But at the end of the day, there is the aspect of financing, which seems to be the key aspect that is being left out. So where is the financing? We start looking abroad to get different loans which indebt our countries. No. A lot of foreign FDIs, foreign direct investment, is being talked about. And in this hall, this audience, today I had one name. One name, D. Everybody knows the D. That has been talked about as the big D on the continent. But there are multiple Ds on the continent who can invest. Yeah? So we could also consider domestic direct investment, whereby we mobilize investment for agriculture. But we just don't mobilize investment for agriculture just for the sake. There must be some system. And here's how it works in agriculture financing. There must be a pull and then a push. The pull is the off-taker. Where is the market? And where are you going to sell what you're going to produce, no matter the country or the region? Then mobilize smallholder farmers. With smallholder farmers, their motivation and incentive is that you're creating jobs, one, for the youth, two, for the women, three, people with disability, four, for the value chain actors. Not everybody is going to have a degree. Not everybody is going to have a PhD. I hold 2 PhDs, but I'm again a farmer. I do farming. I'm into livestock. I'm into coffee back home. Why do I go into that and put my hands in the soil? Because agriculture is the food basket. But again, I invest in multiple entities, SMEs. But and we are many who invest in SMEs on this continent, but there is some logic that has to be to it. That there must be a pool, the market. So we create a market and then mobilize the smallholders who are going to produce such that we don't fall short of the quantity, and then work together with academia to enhance the quality that is needed based on standards, national, regional, transboundary, and cross-border standards. And this is how the money comes in.
So once you invest the money, it has to trickle in into an ecosystem. And this is what we call the agriculture finance. And this is what is going to facilitate and popularize CFTA as far as implementing it is concerned in Africa. Once the youth buy in that agriculture is now no longer some menial job, but it is agribusiness, like one of the speakers said, that where you can earn income, revenue, a livelihood, you can support your family. Today morning I was talking to one person on the table was seated. I said that what do you do? She said that she deals in honey, and I asked her that if I brought you fabrics in your Liberia, can I take the honey? She's like, no, my honey is for money. I'm like, but my fabric can act as the money. I bring fabric, you give me the honey, I take the honey, I give you the fabric from East Africa, the honey from Liberia, which is in West Africa, and we're already doing a trans boundary or intra-Africa trade. You see, this is the kind of conversation and practical, physical conversations. I said right from the start that I'm a typical private sector business person, entrepreneur. I see everything in the eyes of an entrepreneur. There must be logic in making money, and money not only for me, but for everybody on the continent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you being conscious of the time. And what did we hear from him? I thought I heard a little something about trade by barter. Okay. Yeah. Getting honey and giving a fabric for it. It might be something to have a conversation on. 75% of the youth in the country, of the population being the youth, and which has been a big issue of how do we bring our youth and women. I haven't heard a lot, and please pardon me on the panel. A woman was supposed to be a part of it, but at the last things didn't quite work out. So again, we are promoting gender parity. So forgive me, Dr. Jenny, okay? And many other ones. But we are including, so in this conversation, we want to see how women can be a big part of this. And we do know that in terms of our culture, thank you, I'm sorry. Okay, as a matter of fact, we've talked a lot about the youth. I do have a question in terms of the methodology, practical methodology. What can APSS work with the private sector to actualize this and solve the problem of unemployment in our communities when we really need to feed our people and improve on our agricultural sector? But I'm not going to spend time to have you answer that because the time is fast spent. I do want to give opportunity for one or two people. All right, I see a hand here and I see another hand. If you can make it real short because we got to wrap up this session so we can move into the next one. Please, go right ahead. Tell us who you are.
Okay. I think all the panel, they've spoken well, but I've not heard so much about political stability in Africa, considering we're thinking of trade amongst ourselves. Recently, there have been 2 coups d'etats in Africa. Then, just yesterday or 2 days ago, in Sudan, there's an uprising to change the government. So I've not heard so much about political stability in Africa. Secondly, the world is moving forward. We are not talking about technological transfer in transforming our agriculture. There's not so much talk about it. And lastly, why is it that, and I would like Mr. Janto to speak to that, why is that as African leaders, we have not been able to say that for all the natural resources that we have got in these international organizations to come and take and transport out of our country? Why can't we say that, look, we are implementing laws that will say that, look, before any natural resources is taken out of Africa, assuming that the natural resources has to take, let's say, 5 steps to become a consumable product, at least let's do 2 of the processes in Africa before it leaves our shores. Then, over time, we enforce that the 3rd process is done, the 4th process is done, and the 5th process is done. So that all over Africa, we can industrialize our nations and be able to trade amongst ourselves. So 1, political stability, technological transfer, and promulgation of new laws that will enforce international organizations to transform our raw materials before it leaves our continent. Thank you very much.
Yes, please give him a hand, okay? Those are very practical questions. And, okay, you are the one? Okay, sir. Would you please? And under a whole lot of...
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Edmond Awaiti. My question has to do with Mr. Jantua. I would like you to respond. We've seen that access to land is a critical ingredient for agricultural transformation. However, our land tenure system is a major issue. From your experience, what do you propose to transform the problem with the land tenure system in Ghana? Thank you.
Wow. It just looks like, let's get them in, please. Just a couple of minutes, all right? Let's get all the questions in, and they can tackle it, and that will be it, okay? Would you please go ahead, sir? And then we will have one woman. We got to get a woman in here. Are you in agreement with me? Oh, you did not say it. Are you in agreement with getting a woman in the conversation? Thank you. All right. Please go right ahead, sir. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Simran Kwachi, Vice Chair, Accra Regional Chamber of Commerce and Industry. My question is, we are talking of youth in agriculture, youth in that, youth in this. But you all know that over here, our succession plan is practical, not theory. Over the years, we've demonized children helping their parents in the farms during vacations and holidays and their free time. And we all glorify it. Oh, child labor, child labor, child labor. Meanwhile, those who are saying child labor have an agenda, hidden agenda that we did not foresee as at that time. Also, if you go back there, we live with them. You could see their children running around in their operations. You see them all over. It's nothing. They are serious, they are learning, they are adopting it. And now, over 20 years, it's a complete generation. And now we are begging the youth to go back into agriculture because the parents are aging and the industry is crumbling. So where do we stand moving forward?
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Getting the youth in there, social transformation, right? Re-engineering of the mind. I like that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prof. My question will be, just because I'm standing to represent the women's voice, if our agriculture system is efficient enough, why do we have, within the entire world, Africa is still considered as a malnourished? Can you hear me? So our under 5, children under 5 years old, are considered as malnourished, and stunting has some effect in the long run. The youth that you're talking about, the human resource that you're talking about, that we've got as an asset for the continent, the moment we still have a higher percentage of stunting, our mental capacity will not develop to compete with the rest of the world. Agriculture system is very important, but why are we not using it to address the issue of malnourishment in Africa?
Thank you very much. 4 questions. Let's see which one you can tackle in just a couple of minutes that we have to wrap this up. Go ahead, Dr. Clarkson.
What I'm going to touch is agriculture technology. So right now, the way we are attracting young people into agriculture is not doing business as it was 30, 40 years ago, but enhancing technology in agriculture. For example, when we are looking at climate, no longer depend on the season, that it will rain, it will shine. The seasons can be predictable through technology, which has been enhanced. So that has also accelerated financing towards agriculture. And the young people are not going to get their hands so dirty they used to do it. So the tillage has to improve, which means that mechanization, either use hand tractors or you're going to use commercial tractors to open up the land. But mostly with mobile applications that can even predict and determine a lot of information is being shared. So that attracts the young people into agriculture, that's one, but also enhancing technology systems. One of the challenges I should assure members here, why agriculture used to be considered very risky, is because it was unpredictable. Even insurance companies didn't want to go into insurance for agriculture. But now with technology, we work hand in hand with meteorological centers. There are applications, there are data gadgets, like one he was handling, Professor here, that we can predict and determine, and also use satellite technology to know the size of land and what work is being done. So technology has enhanced agriculture reliance, which has also enhanced agriculture financing, and also addressing climate smart technologies, which means that agriculture, let's be optimistic that as a food basket of the world, Africa, that's what it's going to be. I'll let my colleagues talk about the political and the issue of the women understanding. Thank you so much.
Okay. He had said to me earlier that he would want me to take the political aspect, and probably I'll touch on the lady's question. So quickly on the aspect of the politics, I hope we realize that what we call politics is not politics most of the times. Because if we were to have true politicians, then we would not even be talking about partisan politics, which is one of the challenges we have. Because the word politics is actually supposed to be about running the affairs of a city for the purpose of improving the life of everybody in that city. Then a politician, quickly, is one that is a model citizen, that if everybody behaved like him or her, they would have the best nation. A politician is supposed to be somebody who happens to be, out for the welfare of the general group, which automatically would include the aspect of ensuring that every family is training the child to actually get involved in growing food. Now, so right from childhood, some of us came from agricultural families, and that's why even in my house in East Legon, I had the other day, I measured something that is just supposed to be, sunflower. It is 11 feet 7 inches tall already because of smart farming in terms of nutrient density of the soil. Because it's nutrient density you're talking about. If we could train people to know how to feed plants, because they are the ones that will take care of your health at the end of the day, it will be very helpful. Now, in terms of various forms of agriculture, since we're talking about envisioning the future, maximizing, it means you're going to go into hydroponics, you're going to go into aquaponics, you're going to go into vermiculture, you're going to go into permaculture, you're going to go into all kinds of other things, including, aeroponics, where you grow plants using the air. And All of these things, by God's grace, I have tried, and they're working. But, so it is something we need to work on. As for the aspect of the politics, it is important that we ensure that the politicians are not coming as politicasters, but politicians. Because a politicaster is a pretender to politics, somebody who is an imposter, somebody who is a petty politician, because a true politician will be out to take you into your destiny in life, in that season, in that generation, in history. Thank you. Politicaster.
So, tell me, you are, what's your name? You're a doctor, are you? Doctor, so tell me, who is a true politician in Africa? No, the description he gave. Tell me, look through Africa. What politician is like that? How many? Can they change what Africa is going through? Don't think so. Look, let me tell you something. The reason why we do not have stability in Africa with our politicians is because, one, politics has become a business. They get in there. Look, I don't understand. You come and knock on my door. You tell me you have a manifesto which is going to better my life, and so I vote for you. As I vote for you, you are there to come and serve me, not me serve you. But what do we find? The politicians get into power and we are serving them. So it's a politics of greed. They are there for their own interest. They are not there to make you happy. They are not there to make your life happy. But you should remember, it is the collective will of the people that can change the politician. But unfortunately, the same people who vote them in are the same people who cry "Choboy" for them when they take wrong decisions. So we are at a crossroads where Africa is concerned, because the politicians truly are not ready to listen to the people. They cannot be. But when you say they are not politicians, they are politicians. They're just not acting like politicians. Well, whatever the case is, words are good, but we've got to get them to work and work on our behalf. Now, you see, and I think it's said throughout everybody who has spoken, manifestos today is a group of promises of a political party. So really, as business people, we should push to ban manifestos and make sure we have long-term national development plans that are continuous. And the key to a long-term national development plan is that when one party ends, the next party comes and follows it through. And the whole nation is supposed to know what is in that long-term development plan. Because if they don't know, they cannot hold the government responsible. But the problem with the African, and it's got to do with all of us, put something in a book, they won't read it. They won't read it. Those who will read, very small. Very small. Now, somebody asked me the question of, apart from land tenure, why is it that we can't transform our natural resources? Do we have money? So we go to China for $4 billion and we know China needs our bauxite. So China will tell you, before I give you the money, you've got to give me some natural resource. And then you say to them, okay, what do you want? Bauxite. Then you say to them, you've got to add value to it before you go. If we are going to do that, we are not going to give you the money. And you have made promises in your manifesto to the people. The people are waiting for you to act.
So you weigh the two. So, okay, take it away. Give us the $4 million. Who suffers? We. Look at cocoa. You've been exporting cocoa for years. Do we add value? Look at gold. My father in the Rawlings regime used to be Minister of Local Government. He showed me a map of Ghana. The entire stretch of Ghana is covered in gold. Do we have a gold processing plant in Ghana?
All right, so I'm going to have to wrap it up here. Please, can we give the panelists a hand? There is just so much to talk about, and we are gaining wisdom. Next is methodology. Methodology of putting all of this that we have heard into implementation. That comes with planning as well. So as we're hearing from the panelists, they have some great visions for Africa. They're envisioning. They're looking for ways to maximize agricultural potential of Africa. They're looking for ways to wake up. Let's get the regional economic communities to where what they were created to do, and let's make AfCFTA work. So APSS is coming alongside you to make sure this happens. Please take this conversation very seriously. This is not another term. This is not another summit. It is something that moves into implementation, one person at a time, one country at a time, however, but we're going to make sure we get it done. I'm not so sure if someone online has a last say, and then we move to the next session. Anybody online? Professor Gideon, are you still there? All right, ladies and gentlemen, please give yourselves a hand, and all of our panelists, thank you so much.
A round of applause to our panelists. Can we ask them for an official picture before? Can you do an official picture, Phyllis, for our records with our chairperson? All right, that's fine. Okay, I'll just run with the two. Yes. Wonderful. Well done. Wonderful. We're going to go straight into the next session on manufacturing and infrastructural imperatives. So I would like to invite Mr. Seth Akwabo and then Professor Ayman Muslim to come to the podium, please. Thank you. Welcome. Yeah, please go ahead. Well, good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. What we're going to do is just get straight into manufacturing and infrastructural imperatives. So I'm going to ask Professor Ayman to go first and just give us a snippet of just his take on the concept of manufacturing in infrastructural imperatives from his own understanding and experience, and then I will have Mr. Seth go after that. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's working too.
Is that working?
Yes. Okay, good afternoon. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Ayman Musallam. I'm here representing the Green Building Council of Egypt. I'm also a professor at the University of California, Irvine. But here, actually, I'm coming for Africa, so I'm coming representing the Egyptian Green Building Council. It's totally a pleasure to be around, and I learned a lot myself, at least, from the great presentations. I mean, I didn't see anyone like better than the other. All are great. That's true statement. I learned a lot from the experienced people and also the young Africans. So it's really a good thing, and also will help me for my session tomorrow in social solidarity. Again, my job as a professor at the University of California, also I am in 3 departments, one of which is manufacturing and advanced materials. And, you know, when I prepared for that meeting, I look at the wealth of this continent. I mean, you know, you see the reports, and these are maybe even underestimating report, that Africa has $82 trillion of worth of natural resources. This is only the discovered one, and I hope they don't discover too much now. I need something to be sustainable for the new generation to come. But whatever the outside people who wanted to take it all, they knew very much, with evidence, that there is about $82 trillion of assets in your house. And we need to do something about it. If you leave it unguarded, it's going to be gone, some way or another. And there's too many tricks to get this money out. So one of the issues, I mean, in manufacturing, it's not, I don't think that the plan of us as African to do a new airplane and trying to compete today with Airbus and Boeing. I don't think this is our plan. I think our plan is to serve people, to connect to the need of the people first. If we can satisfy the needs of the people by manufacturing even simple type of product, I think we succeed very much in the first stage of learning how to be listed in the industrialization list worldwide. Just give you an example. You know, I've been, you know, traveling at least 50, 60, 80 countries, one of which is in China since 90. So I saw the revolution in industry and infrastructure and many other ways. I'm serving as honorary professor in few universities. But, you know, I learned the culture as we travel to China. And as you know, in February, they have their Chinese New Year. And they have that about 2 to 3 weeks of vacation. And of course, I have, you know, things that I'm doing there, and I was like upset. Why? I mean, how can the country stop for 3 weeks or 4 weeks? And the answer from one person from the government, he said, this is our blessed time for the economy. We have 1.6 billion people that they are buying, selling, traveling, spending the money. Even if we have the COVID-19, our money is okay. We are not in hazards. So if we look at Africa, and I hope one day it will be one country, United Africa. And then we look at China, very much similarity in area and population, maybe 1.6 here, 1.2 billion. But can you imagine that we are circulating our money even among our people without even going through, you know, exporting? We're still going to survive. We're not going to have a deficit. But of course, there is a lot of issues hidden. Nobody wants us to be high in the scale. We know that. We talked about manufacturing. Manufacturing is it's not just to buy a machine. I was talking to a high-rank person in Egypt in manufacturing. It's a military manufacturing facility. And he told me, my problem is not to buy a machine from China to do a mask. My issue, if you can help us, to do the machine that does the mask, but not just to buy from, I'm not against China, I'm just saying buy it from a certain country. This is not manufacturing. This is one step of manufacturing. Once I have an issue, especially when you have sophisticated military, component or so, we're stuck. We're under them. So now another slavery now, because I can't do nothing. And that's happened actually in Egypt, if you remember, in 1967, during that war that Egypt lost. We have the MiG, we have other fighters, and we need to replace the parts so they can do something. And they said no. If we have our independence, not independence politically, but independent from the economic point of view, from manufacturing point of view, who cares? We'll do it 24/7. Factory we're gonna do the engine, we're gonna replace everything, and that's independency. This is the true independency. So what I'm saying is, we have to think all together that our people actually our assets, but we need to prepare. I loved one gentleman, he talked about the infrastructure. He said, let's just start by building the infrastructure of the people before you start thinking about roads and sewers. The people has to feel the dignity. They feel like they're proud. I left Egypt long time ago. I need to get my graduate studies. And unfortunately, I came back to Egypt after I finished. But the system did not let me do what I wanted to do. And I came back. Some other colleagues stayed there. So I had to go back. I really had to, because I could not make what I do. But that does not mean that I escaped. For the past 40 years, I'm still professor at the University of California, and I spend more time in Egypt more than I do in US. I teach my people in Egypt. I go also North Africa. I have the pleasure, this is an honor to be here in Ghana and more deeper in Africa, but most of the time, the African country that I visited, like in Ethiopia, maybe 10 years ago, and now in North Africa in several countries to help them also to do new manufacturing facilities in different. So what I'm saying is, we have to look to make that really happen. We can dream, but not too big in this area, because we are not the known in our history to be the industrial continent. No, but we can make it. Look at the example of African that I have seen in the last 40 years in US. I mean, a very close friend of mine, Dr. Emmanuel Coffey, he's one of the highest rank, position in NASA Goddard Flight Space Center. I mean, they cannot work without him. And unfortunately, there was some issue that clearance and stuff to talk to us during this meeting, but his heart is with us here. And I love to have him here, but I couldn't, but you see how important that person, even virtually, they don't want him to talk. I don't know the reasons, but what I'm saying is, we always label African, whether I'm dark skinned or dark, but still I'm the African. By the way, whenever I go to a certain position or so, they ask you in US, the ethnical or the race. And they have different things, but I can't classify myself except African. So when I put African, they said, no, you're not, black skin. I said, but I'm African. Really, this is true. And I insisted to do that, because they have another one, not like unidentified, or you say, why Mediterranean? I said, I'm not Mediterranean, I'm African. And at least in this position of my life, I can't force things to happen. I'm always doing it. So what I'm saying is, if you have that pride in you that we can make it, we can make it. When you see what I said, 82 trillion US dollars of assets, I mean, you guys are rich. Can you imagine population if you're 1.2, divide the 82 trillion for each person, you're gonna be rich. So why are we waiting? I mean, people are gonna, as I said, looking at us to see how we're gonna manage your money. And I think we can start with the issues that has been discussed here. I learned a lot. The agriculture sector. I mean, if I look at different, like the nuts or the cacao and so forth, and I looked actually yesterday, and the price, when you export those to India, I found that real number in their Chamber of Commerce. It's 200 to 300 times, percent of 2 to 3 times of the value that you send it. So the only what you do is just a very little processing. Why 200 to 300% goes to another end? Why not here back to the people? This is the best strategy being in manufacturing for the past 40 years. Don't start with a huge manufacturing venture. Go with what you have and make that happen. And you're gonna see huge amount of money coming. In Egypt, there was some dreams for Nasser. I'm sure all of you know, I grown up with Nasser was the president of Egypt. And I admire him. I mean, since I was a child. I mean, he went to the point, I read a lot of documents. He built actually with the Czechoslovakia, the first airplane that looks almost identical to the Mirage. And you were developing that in the same time. But then, as I said, nobody likes us to be always going up, and somehow he was killed or whatever, he died. And all our manufacturing facilities now for the Army is doing a GM, Cherokee, and refrigerators and LCDs. These are facilities that he built back in the 50s and 60s. So what I'm saying is, let's just go and use our resources that I feel it's almost unguarded, and use that with a very simple processing. And if we get 200% increase in the value back to the people, that would be great. You look at this in different things. In Egypt, for example, the new leadership, I'm not a politician, but I can see the differences. I mean, I'm old enough to see at least 3 or 4 presidents now, and I can see the guy has a dream. So, and also he has some advisors, maybe good or bad, but I saw something in manufacturing that I like. For example, he looked at issues like what is the natural resources, what is the minimum we can do, and he can bring money, but he needs money quickly. Really, he needs to. He's in big trouble. He want to make some impact. So he found the granite and the marble. We importing from Italy, from Brazil, and so forth, and we have huge amount of marble and granite. And that's why the pharaohs, they put all this status and stuff. And now he has 5 facilities generating money and a very little, just taking the rock, cutting that with saws, huge ones, and then exporting those to Europe, and also using for the local market, which is a huge market, by the way. And so I'm sure that you have even here a lot. The other, I just mentioned something from the agricultural point of view, but you have many other things, maybe I don't know. I'll give you one example similar in Egypt. The limestones, they sell it by the tons, maybe like $15, I think, in a container or something. And then they send it for the Indian market, because they are great now in the pharmaceutical for medicine and stuff. And out of the limestone, you make those tablets, right? Always when you get the medicine, it's like, 5 milligram. What is the rest of the 5 milligram? The whole 1 gram or 2 of your tablet. It's fillers, and most of it's limestone. Actually, limestone is great for us. I mean, it's actually can cure a lot of things in the body. I mean, learning from that. Can you imagine a container or 1 ton by say $20 and worth of that tablets that has milligrams comes back to the country from India? We're talking about maybe not two, 3 times. It goes to 200 to 300 times. If they can use that and put some investment, it's not a huge thing to take that and change it to a byproduct that he can actually, as I said, do it a semi-processing, processing, anything will do. That's now in Egypt, they forbid to sell or export any minerals without at least one stage processing. Phosphates, any other materials, even silicon, the sand. Now we are exporting sand. You know, I was in Malta, island of Malta, and it's just tourists, right? I mean, this is the only income they have in that island. And believe it or not, I make some connection with the government, and what they are exporting, sand. Because all their beaches are rocks, and tourists want to have sand, and it's extremely expensive. So I was there, and I asked one person in the government there, and he told me, we need sand. I told him we have a lot of sand. But again, the sand, the white sand or the black sands are very expensive. So again, the government went to the point, it was not regulated, it's not any sand can be exported. It has to be a certain classification. I think we should do that all here in Africa. So I think you have even more resources. Egypt is just a small part of the continent. And the resources as you go in the southern part and the mid of Africa, you're going to see even treasures. I mean, Egypt will be very, very small as compared to here. The one other thing that you can do, I read many reports about what are the obstacles against us as African to do a lot of manufacturing. One of which, at least, not in Egypt anymore, but the rest of Africa, is the power, the energy. And we are wasting our sun. I mean, the sun was given to us. People cannot even see the sun. Even if you have a cloudy day, still I can use the power of that. And in Egypt, they have invested in the last 5 years or so, billions of dollars, to the point that we have excess of 30 gig of electricity. Now, that's above the need of Egypt. Now they are exporting that to Europe. Just signed with Cyprus. So they're going to have cables now. So we are selling now electricity. So if you look, why I'm saying that, if we have an issue here, why not to do the same thing? Why go to the neighboring countries, and then if you don't have the electricity, then we can do that. One other thing you can do, why you, for one, I'll give you just one example. For example, a product like cement. We use cement in everything we do, right? And construction. Egypt produces huge amount of cement, whether it's a good planning or not. But now, the demand to supply ratio is about, I think, 5 to 12 or 6 to 12. So you have excess of 100%, more than the market can swallow. So why not to have in every African country, or at least region, we have the clinkers. The clinkers is the first step when the cement comes. It looks like small rocks. But that consumes huge amount of energy. Huge. Okay? Electricity and mazot and solar and stuff. So, okay, they are doing it. They cannot escape from the fact that they have done more than they chew. A lot. Why don't we have all the clinkers? So they use whatever they use in Egypt. And I'm sure, especially the political leadership now, very much pushing everybody to work with Africa. Just to let you a statement. Again, it's not, I'm not talking on behalf of anybody, but I'm just saying I can see the emotion. You know, like, you know, when they know that I'm going to Africa, they are very happy. You know, it used to be the honeymoon was during Nasser, but then became cold, but now the honeymoon is coming back. And so if you can look at the excess of 100% of production as a clinker, so you don't have to worry about the energy. Get the clinkers, small stones, put these grinder, you buy them, you know, in any countries, even like in China, very cheap. You put this and just, it's a big ball and has small balls inside, and hit those and get your cement. So now you have a little amount of dependency on the energy. Somebody else, African, have done the work, and then why don't we do that? There, they may not even know how to get rid of the clinkers, but they have to reduce it. If you know the cement manufacturing process, you can't stop. If you stop the furnace several times, it's gonna crack. They have to work. Once you get in, you get in. So can you imagine now, I need to build Africa. I need to do this. Why don't we have that integration? And as I said, I know in Egypt, the mood is to do things with Africa. This is totally, I know as a person, not as a, so everybody have that feeling, business people and otherwise. So I'm just giving an example. I don't want to have all the talk without the discussion and also the gentleman, distinguished gentleman here. So this is just an opening for me to say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think the key words here are basically manufacturing is key, and then this integration across the continent for us to collaborate in a number of key projects. I think that's also very important. Mr. Seth, over to you. May we really have your say before we interact around a few questions that I have. If that's not working, then maybe just grab the one.
Let me grab this one. Okay, so thank you very much. My name is Seth Chuma Kobwa. I work with Association of Ghana Industries. So basically we organize the industries in Ghana, very much into manufacturing. And therefore the subject of manufacturing is always of great interest to me. The challenge of speaking after a professor has spoken is there, because he can rattle for so many hours on his feet. But basically, I think that there's no doubt that manufacturing is key in this Continental Free Trade Agreement. I believe over 80% of the goods we'll be trading in will be in goods. Of the items we'll be trading in will be manufacturing products. And therefore, if you are talking Continental Free Trade, then the key issue we are talking about here is manufacturing. Because if you are trading in the goods, which goods are we trading in? We talk of value addition. The fact that it's originating in your country does not mean you are getting the entire benefits of manufacturing that product in your country or in Africa. And therefore, the strength of value addition is key. And to be able to add that much value requires a lot. A lot of things must happen to keep manufacturing going. And of course, in terms of the benefits of manufacturing, I think it's been overemphasized here. Job creation, modernization, technology development, everything goes along. Therefore, manufacturing becomes very important. I mean, it's a puzzle that if you look at the resources we have as Africa, you wonder why we are still not doing that well when it comes to manufacturing. If you have over 12% of the oil reserved, the world's oil reserve in Africa, 40% of the gold reserves in Africa, over 80 to 90% of the platinum we have in Africa, over 60% of the unutilized arable land is still in Africa. Then you wonder why we should be poor as a continent. It means we are so blessed with so much that we are unable to utilize it. The challenge is how do we convert them into something else? And that's manufacturing. So value addition becomes very key. But as I said, a couple of things must happen at the same time. Countries that have developed, because manufacturing requires long-term investment, you need to have stability in a lot of things to enable you to do big-ticket manufacturing activities. So here, macroeconomic environment becomes key. Issues of regulations, laws, taxes, these are soft side of the equation which we cannot gloss over. If you don't have proper policies that support manufacturing growth, you will have difficulty growing manufacturing, because the investors are looking long term. When they invest today, it's not like trading where you buy and sell, you get your margin, and then you move on to the next stage. Manufacturing, it matures over a long time, and for that reason, You need to have stability in a lot of things. And therefore, in Africa, if you want to really benefit from manufacturing, we must have stability in our macroeconomic environment across Africa so that we can actually do this business. We have a big opportunity. The opportunity is in the resources that we have, and also the fact that we are coming together means that we have a population to our size. We have the market to our size. Of course, population is not equal to market, because if you have low-income people, their consumption and ability to buy is lower, and therefore we need to grow that. But then the mere fact that you have population to your side means that certain basic items will still be procured, and therefore we need to manufacture and sell. Unfortunately, when you go to most African countries, like what happens in Ghana, most of our shops, about 70% of the products we are consuming are imported, and therefore we have a huge opportunity to turn this around and actually ensure that we have local manufacturing. So the macroeconomic environment is key, and then comes to the next item, which we have is also part of the topic we are discussing, and that's the infrastructure. Infrastructure is key, and until we're able to develop our infrastructure to a certain extent, certain kind of manufacturing becomes difficult to have. Power is one of the key areas. Most African countries, except the Egypt, the Ethiopias, and a few others who have, good supply of energy at competitive cost, most of us are struggling. In Ghana today, the Ministry of Energy says we have excess capacity, which is true, but what is the cost of energy? Very expensive. If you go to Nigeria, if you go to Sierra Leone, Liberia, and all that, they have a challenge with a consistent, reliable, and regular supply of energy, of electricity. And for you to attract big-time manufacturing plants, you need this basic infrastructure. It is key. I know that there are big projects that are coming around. The Graninga project in DR Congo, Ethiopians are also having theirs, Nigerians are planning something. When all this crystallizes, I believe that to supply the power needs of our people. But the point is that currently, Ghana buys energy at, 15 cents per kilowatt hour. In China, it's less than 5 cents. How can you compete when you are manufacturing with that high energy cost? And if in certain products, energy costs about 30% of the cost, if you take, steel mills, for example. And therefore, to be competitive, and the name of the game is competitiveness. The fact is that when the consumer goes to the market to buy, he's not looking at where the product is coming from. He looks at the quality, he looks at the price. If the price is good and the quality is good, he will buy, regardless of where it comes from. And therefore, for us to be able to capture our own market, we need to reduce cost of production. And energy is one. And all the other infrastructure that we've been talking about. Trading amongst ourselves becomes more difficult and more expensive if you don't have the infrastructure properly developed. If you want to ship goods from Ghana to Sierra Leone, the ship goes all the way to Spain before it comes back. So instead of few days of just across the ocean here, you have to wait for weeks and months. And all adds to the cost. And therefore, if your cost of production is high, your price will be high. There's no doubt about it. And if the price is high, you are uncompetitive. And therefore, to capture the market, you need very strong manufacturing, which is based on basic things being provided, key infrastructure, macroeconomic environment, and all the issues that helps manufacturing. Maybe the last thing I'll mention, it is manufacturing we are talking about, but a key element of it is also skills to develop and operate in the manufacturing sector. I was looking at some statistics and I was getting excited. The literacy rate in Africa is growing quite fast. I think in some instances we are over 70%, in recent times. In Ghana, we now have free education, so everybody is getting literate. So basic reading and writing, I think we are getting there. But is that what we need? It is good, but not enough. We need the skills, and the skills requires that we produce the human resource that has knowledge, scientific capacity, and technical capacity to help the manufacturing sector. This is lacking. There is so much, unemployment in our countries, and yet our companies complain of lack of skills in specific areas. So if you really want to have that quantum leap in manufacturing, we also need to look at our skills development. These are all factors that are critical for manufacturing development. I think I will leave it here for now, and then wait for other questions. Thank you.
Those are really amazing thoughts if you think about the trillion estimated in reserves on this continent, what would you do differently in terms of this manufacturing vision?
Okay, that's a great question, and tough one too. Let me just relate that to the last point that the gentleman just mentioned, which is the training, the skills. I was also astonished when I heard that, or I looked at one report, I'm hoping it's not even true, that the percentage of engineers or you know, the more scientific oriented education in Africa as compared to Germany is about 3%. That's shocking. And I'll tell you something very interesting. If you look at opposite in Egypt, we have maybe 3 times than Germany. Does that mean that we are number 1 in manufacture? No, we're not. I mean, as compared to, if I put Germany, which as I believe, in my expertise, they are one of the top manufacturing industry. But what I'm saying is, we need also to balance this. Again, I'm talking about, you know, as an Egyptian African or African Egyptian. Why not to use the surplus, really surplus? I'm talking about hundreds of thousands a year. I mean, graduate, not hundreds of thousands, maybe 50, 60,000 in different disciplines. And some of them, they are unemployed. And now we're saying, okay, Africa, the rest of Africa, we are low in this. Let's just wait another 20, 30 years. And we know, you know, you are the rich guy that don't know what to do with your money and is sitting in the corner and millions of people looking at it. I'm going to wait another 20, 30 years, like most of the reports say, until we can do it. I can't. Why don't we integrate? That's the whole question. Let's just integrate. You as a private sector, this is the heart and aorta of Africa. As was mentioned before, yes, the governments, they have their own way of thinking and handling issues. There is the public sector, yes, but in anywhere, even US, what is the bulk economy comes from? Private sector. In fact, anything that's close to public sector is always losses. You know, like even the post office in US, like many of you, they live in US, it is actually a company. They have, it's self-sustained. The government doesn't pay a penny to the post office. It's a US postal office, but has nothing to do with the government except they own it. The largest manufacturer of military, okay, it's called Aerospace Corp. All the weapons in the whole world, killing everybody, is actually in one facility close to El Segundo in close to Los Angeles. It's called Aerospace Corporation. All the rockets, all the smart bomb, right? It's a company. It's a Delaware company, LLC. It's owned by the government, but they don't pay a penny. They have to be self-sustained. What I'm saying, this is the responsibility of the private sector. So back to your question, I'm not trying to escape from that tough question. I'm just trying to relate. This issue of, okay, we wait until we get the new generation of scientific-oriented education. In the morning, there was discussion about, which is, I respect all opinions, why I'm studying geography, why I'm not to be just teach me how to be a businessman. Well, if you don't have those medical doctors to cure our lots of sick children and other bringing people to volunteer from outside, we need us to volunteer to our people, number one. Number two, I need an engineer to help me to do the roads and teach the next generation. Not just to teach engineers, teach people with no skills to have a skill. That's a job. We will have different mission as African than a developed country, or what they call a developed country. We are not just going to produce an engineer to be an engineer going to the site. No. Obligation of that person should be written in the curriculum at the university. You are different than the graduate in Switzerland. You are African. You have obligation. So your job is not only to go and build, but you have obligation every year to get me 5 skilled laborers. Otherwise, I don't give you a license. You have to help me. We are not in the situation like Europe or US or other countries. We are in a situation we know our issues, like, for example, the infrastructure. I hear it all the time. And if I wait again for the roads to be done, I mean, we're dreaming that for, I don't know, 100 years, then the money sits in the back, the 82 trillion is going to be stolen. So what we do, I mean, we have to do the best out, like 2 countries close to each other. Unfortunately, I don't know that much about, issues here in Africa, but maybe Ghana and the neighboring country, maybe they have some agreement, so we have a connection, or we go step by step. Don't you think about issue about having the money to do the infrastructure? I don't think, at least my opinion, it is not the case. The case that anybody outside Africa, this is where the money is. I need that to be always the giant, as we call him. I want it to be at least half asleep. I don't want them to wake. That's going to be a disaster for many people, many countries. This is where I get, I mean, I heard some TED, lecture, the TED series. That was a real report. That I don't know how many billion per year euros goes to France until today. I don't know how. I mean, that person was talking. But I'm just saying, if we have a road, as always they say, the Golden Triangle or whatever, the triangle between South Africa, Egypt, and Rabat, and Morocco, and in between, can you imagine the amount of trade that we'll have? We'll have huge amount of movement of things. I mean, I don't have to depend on the sea or anything, or air. I mean, and this is actually, just to give you an issue related to that. See, manufacturing, as I said, in our stage, we are in KG1. We wanted to be serving the demand of the market first. We're not gonna, I don't believe that I have to do solar cells now. I mean, I need it, but not the point. But I need to do some tools to let me go quickly and guard this money. And one of the things I would like to see is to have, for example, the roads. The roads has to be done by us. And how can we do that? By our resources. There is issues in political issues. As I said, I'm sure there is a pressure on the top of governments because other people, they don't want you to do that because this is going to be a nightmare. Once we have the roads, the network is here. And one of the experience-wise, in Egypt, the last 4 or 5 years, there is actually huge amount of roads. Actually, I have, in a week or so, a conference, press conference with about 100 reporters from different parts of the world, just talking about the impact, the economic impact and social impacts on the highways that has been established in the last 4 years. Egypt was number 181 for quality of roads. This is true. This is United Nations. Last August, jumped to 28, higher than many European countries. And if people are saying in Egypt, this guy, he's not thinking. You're spending huge. Give us food. Don't give us roads. But you know what happened with these roads? At least 50 cities has been established. The land that was just a desert has a value now. People are buying it. Shops start to be built. It became automatic. Once you start that, you don't think about only infrastructure just because I'm going to spend money. You're gonna actually cultivate societies. You're going to bring jobs. Can you imagine if you have like a 1,000-mile, 600 kilometers of even roads? How many people are going to work in this? Put in the sub-base, the asphalt, and so forth. How much you're going to gain out of this, of societies built around that road? So what I'm saying, in addition to the ease of movement of goods, within the continent, but also we are gaining what? We're gaining as a fringe benefit by building our societies and bringing the people economical, level to be higher. Again, the education, and I'm not against what has been said, but needs to have the different scientific, engineering, and so forth. And also, we are, as I mentioned, Africa is different. We have to have more work than many other continents if you want to move quickly before the money goes. So what I'm going to do, I have to divide my intention not only to have a bachelor's degree, because in Egypt that's a big problem, the social issue. If you don't get a degree, 4 years college, and you do an institute, no, you don't like that, or diploma. I think the focus here, part of it will be the leaders to lead the laborers and the crews, and also we have to have the academia to be involved with the government, to have institutions that will help plumbing, electricians, and so forth. We have to generate our own trained, skilled laborers before we say why we have a problem with manufacturing. And this is not new. I mean, many other gentlemen and ladies has spoken about that issue. But let's just, since I am an educator for 42 years, I'm just saying that it is the responsibility also of the universities and the governmental institution that they have to help in that. And the government and even the presidents had to be advised that this is essential. And I'll give you just one example. There was a large contractor, and still now a company, because now it became a government, Osman, or Arab Contractors. And that time, that person who passed away, Osman, he was visionary back in 50s. And he by his private money, established a labor university. So they make the people feel good. You're a labor, but you're graduate from university. It's not for engineers. This is for laborers. And they give them a huge certificate. They stay not 4 years, they stay for 6 months, depending on the specialty. And during this 6 months, they are not sitting in a chair. Their jobs is to take the essential fundamental thing 1 week, and 1 week they are working and under supervision. And without it, they cannot pass. So 6 months, you get a foreman. And in the same time, there is income. So that person who has like 5, 6 kids still can learn and has also money and can feed his or her family. So I think also, if you think about it from the global point of view, again, you need your heart and to be inside that issue. And I'm sure all of you has that in your hearts. If you think about the private sector, and private sector also is a victim, because you want to do things. You have money already in the market, but you lose sometimes. Why? Because I don't have the tools. So if we think, if you look not a private, but if you as a private sector think, you know what, in all my sector, I'm going to talk to different people who are large or medium size, and I'm going to do the institution private. It's not by fees, it's not for profit. It's actually my profit will be the people or the labor or the skilled people who are going to come, and the fees for me is to have with me a contract for 2 years, and then you're free to go. Because even if you let him go from your business, you know very well he's going to serve Africa. So it doesn't really matter. You're still also getting your money back. I mean, globally. So I think that issue is very important. And once you do that infrastructure, as I'm borrowing that from a gentleman from the morning, the infrastructure as an infrastructure physically, tangibly, and the infrastructure of the people, which is even more value. So if I have this too, then I'll be great. The second thing, or one of the things also, as I said, the trading. Also another gentleman was talking about, he has honey, he want to trade that, Why don't we also try to see this as an example? Like in Egypt, I'm giving just example of Egypt. So the clinkers comes here, less costly to do energy because we have that issue, the uncompetitive. By the way, if they get it for uncompetitive market for energy, you're going to be competitive. If the other countries did not take that opportunity, 100% you'll be competitive because you need just an engine to hit that small rocks. Then you can actually export it to that, even between us. There is nothing wrong that one state like Ghana versus Congo, and this makes money, and that competition. The competition is very healthy. We are not trying to abuse each other, but there is no, I mean, if we, all of us, somebody will get the 82 trillion and give everybody $1 here, nobody gonna move. So the competition is very important, very healthy. And we saw, as I said, Rwanda and other countries that I heard of, even in Ethiopia when I went there. So they are growing. The issue, by the way, is not only the hydro energy. You know, like in Egypt, by the way, they spend billions. And that's unfortunately was also several loans from the IMF. But for some reason, lucky enough, that there was market and shortage of energy around the neighborhood, Arab neighborhood, and also Europe. So now, yes, it was costly, but it was not just the high dam, but through the regular way of doing it. So I think the opportunities are there. And always, you have to understand also, I like some of the discussion here when they say that the Europe or U.S. and so forth, they look at you. You don't want you to get everything, you know, to be very successful. That's true, which is fine. I mean, we don't have to cry. You know, you always, what they can do is just try to dictate some policies here to help. You know, I hate when I hear, oh, this illegal immigrant, that's why the H2020 program, sorry, this is also European funded, but, and always, oh, African is crossing, they're killing, they're doing. I'm sorry, you owe me few hundred years. You cross without any legality. You came and killed me, you took my resources, and you left. And I did not have the opportunity to talk. So you pay some of that. If some people left, in my opinion, I'm sorry, maybe this is not the appropriate way, but for me, I get so angry because you came by thousands not to help me or find a job. You came to take the jobs and the wealth, and you left. So anyway, so that's my 2 cents.
Prof, I think with your 42-year experience, we could listen to you forever. My bosses are beginning to text me saying it's time, it's time.
Yes.
But can I give Mr. Said at least some closing remarks? My question to you is, you know, just in 2 minutes, from what you now know, if you could redo education for young African minds, what would you expose them to? When you think about this whole thing of manufacturing.
Well, I think the starting point to be something that hammers on attitudinal change, the soft side of the education itself, because our attitude is critical, no matter the skill you acquire. If you don't have the right attitude in the workplace, you can't develop yourself and you can't contribute to the company that you're working in and the development of the country. So I think that is critical, and we have to emphasize on that. But then, the issue of education is education that is the right fit for our development. One cannot point to a particular education, but then let's look at our needs. In trying to resolve the challenges of our country and of our development, what are the needs? And in trying to resolve it, what kind of education do we need to be able to address it? In the case of manufacturing, we need practical hands. We need people who can work with machines, who can contribute ideas in terms of entrepreneurship, who can think fast, think ahead, and solve problems on the ground. That's what we need. I remember I was in a program in Trinidad and Tobago, and they have an institution that trains technical people. And they say that if you come from a university and you did engineering, they don't call you an engineer. Just because you've had a university degree does not make you an engineer. They have another school who takes about 2-3 years practical training. And in that institution, they have all the machines that is working, and they don't just simulate, they actually take jobs. So you go to their machine producing factory, and they are producing machine parts. And the people working there are students. So they have practical work to do. When they finish and they go into factory or to manufacturing, they have all the skills and they are working the next day. In their electrical engineering department, for you to enter, you must come from university. But they say you are not an electrical engineer. Go and work in the field. That department of the institution, they take on electrical jobs. So most of the big companies that are doing electrical jobs, they bid like normal, contracting work. And then they are using their students to fix it. So the person leaves that school or leaves that institution, he goes to the factory, and next day he's actually a supervisor who has actually worked with his hands. That's the kind of skill we need. And we need to have a system that produces that skill. Otherwise, we churn out large numbers of people from the universities, and then they are not fitting into our industrial development. And that is not good enough. So a combination of this is critical for our development.
Can I use this one? Okay, so my university has a system where if the student does not produce something that society can use, they cannot graduate. That's the engineering department. So they actually graduate very few students because you can finish your studies, but if you haven't designed anything that society needs, they will not certify you. You will remain somewhere, I don't know where, doing what, but you gotta find something that society needs before you can graduate. So that's quite awesome. So on that note, let me conclude proceedings of the day, but ask Mr. Frank or Mr. Nelson if they have announcements for us to end the day. What I can say is we plan to be back here at 8 o'clock tomorrow and start our official proceedings at 9, and we'll be ending again at 5. So we're looking forward to having you. So over to Mr. Nelson for announcements. You can even use that mic here. Thank you.
Good evening.
The mic is still off.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are grateful for our participation today and the way things have gone. It is my prayer things will go further than that from tomorrow, especially our presence throughout the program and our continuing active participation is very, very vital, and especially for our sponsors. They are a bit worried about people signing in and leaving, which is a prevailing phenomena in summits and conferences these days. So we will humbly enjoin your continuing interest and cooperation and participation. We start at 8 o'clock with the tea available because a lot of us may come early and not really have our breakfast. So it will be 8 o'clock to 9, then we continue from there. Those of you who traveled, the logistics will be handled on the 4th day, which is the 22nd Friday with the UN people. So keep your patience and find a way of keeping your bills and your receipts that they have requested. So for example, the travel and fuel receipts, if you have them, you can bring them tomorrow onwards. Thanks very much.
Watch out for the second edition of the Africa Private